What if everything you believed gave your life meaning, your ambitions, relationships, even the way you define success, suddenly felt hollow? Imagine standing at the height of all you've worked for, surrounded by everything you thought would make you happy, only just to feel an unsettling emptiness creeping in, whispering, "What's the point?" That's where Tolstoy found himself. Here was someone who had what most people spend their lives chasing. His fame reached across the globe. His family loved him. His name was etched into history as one of the greats. But none of it filled the void. When the applause faded, when the external achievements stopped feeling real, he found himself staring into a silence that demanded answers. Why do we strive for anything? What's the purpose of effort, connection, or even existence if we all end up in the same place? And here's the strange part. He didn't find an answer in logic or science, or even in his towering intellect. The revelation that saved him came from somewhere unexpected, and it didn't fit neatly into any system of thought. It was raw, deeply personal, and almost disarmingly simple. But it was enough to shift everything for him. So what was it? And why does it matter to us now, in a world that seems to pull people further from each other and from themselves? What Tolstoy discovered isn't just about him. It cuts straight to the heart of questions that quietly haunt everyone at some point. What makes life worth living when the things you thought mattered fall apart? How do you find something real when everything around you feels transient and fragile? Tolstoy's journey isn't just a story about despair. It's about what happens when you stop running from those dark questions. And it's about the kind of clarity that only comes when you stand still long enough to face them. So here's the real question. What would you find if you stopped and stripped away everything you thought made life meaningful? What would be left? To understand Tolstoy's search for meaning, we must first step into the world he inhabited, a world of contradictions. Born into Russian aristocracy in 1828, Tolstoy grew up surrounded by wealth, privilege, and comfort. By his mid-30s, he had achieved what most could only dream of: literary masterpieces, international fame, and the adoration of the intellectual elite. And yet, beneath this veneer of success, there was a growing void, a gnawing sense that none of it truly mattered. By the time he wrote Anna Karenina, Tolstoy was celebrated as one of the greatest writers in history. But fame and fortune did not satisfy him. He began to ask unsettling questions. What is the purpose of life? Why do we exist? And if death is inevitable, what is the point of anything? These questions consumed him, plunging him into a profound existential crisis. In his confession, Tolstoy wrote about the despair that haunted him. My question was the simplest of all questions, lying in the soul of every man, a question without an answer, to which one cannot live. It was, what will come of what I am doing today, or shall do tomorrow? What will come of my whole life? His search for answers led him to philosophy, science, and religion, but none provided the solace he sought. Philosophy gave him logic, but no meaning. Science explained the mechanics of life, but ignored its essence. Even the comforts of family life and artistic expression felt shallow in the face of life's impermanence. This struggle is not unique to Tolstoy. Throughout history, humanity has grappled with the question of meaning. From the Stoics of ancient Greece to the existentialists of modern Europe, thinkers have tried to answer the same riddle. How do we find purpose in a world that appears indifferent to our existence? The Stoics believed that meaning came from aligning one's actions with nature and accepting what cannot be controlled. The existentialists, on the other hand, argued that life has no inherent meaning, and it is up to the individual to create their own. Tolstoy, however, found both of these approaches lacking. For him, neither rationality nor self-made meaning could silence the existential dread that loomed over him. In a desperate attempt to escape his despair, Tolstoy turned to the Russian peasants, people who, despite their poverty and hardship, seemed to live with an unshakable sense of purpose. What did they know that he, with all his education and wealth, had missed? The answer, Tolstoy discovered, lay not in intellect or material success, but in faith. The peasants believed in something greater than themselves, a divine order that gave their suffering meaning. For Tolstoy, this was a revelation. Faith, he realized, was not about blind acceptance or dogma. It was about connection to others, to the infinite, and to something beyond the self. But here's the twist. Tolstoy's realization did not come easily. He wrestled with doubt, fear, and the weight of his own ego. Faith, for him, was not a sudden epiphany. It was a choice, a deliberate act of surrender to the mystery of existence. Why then does this even matter for us today? In a world where everything feels faster, with rapidly growing things like technology, consumerism, constant gratification, we're all caught in this weird crisis of meaning. It's like we're just all drowning in distractions, but somehow feeling more empty and detached than ever. The search for meaning, though, it's not new. It's always been there. The answers? Still just as slippery as they've ever been. So, we come back to Tolstoy's question. What gives your life meaning? Is it money, success, validation, or something else? Maybe something deeper. Now think about this. What if everything you've convinced yourself gives your life meaning is just not real? Like, what if the things you cling to, your job, your relationships, your stuff, they're all just noise? A temporary mask over some bigger, emptier truth hiding underneath. That's where Tolstoy's journey starts, realizing that all the things he thought made his life meaningful, his big achievements, his family, even his sense of purpose, were just sandcastles where the eventual tide comes in and washes them away. He said his life had been all about chasing short-term pleasures, success with his writing, society's applause, a nice home, family. For a while, yeah, it felt fine. It even worked, kind of. But as he kept thinking, there was this question, one he couldn't shake. What's the point of it all? Everything he had, his awards, the admiration, his own happiness, it wasn't going to last. Nothing could outlast death. Whatever you build, whatever name you make for yourself, it all ends the same way, with nothing. That thought nearly broke him. He compared it to a traveler holding onto a flimsy branch over this endless abyss. Above him, death. Below him, the void. He had to ask, if it all ends in death anyway, how could anything in life matter? And it's not just him, is it? That's the question we all deal with, even if we don't say it out loud. We bury it under jobs, Instagram feeds, the latest gadgets, even relationships, thinking they'll fill the gap. But there's always that quiet fear under it all. What happens when it's gone? For Tolstoy, the shift came when he realized you can't just invent meaning out of thin air. It's not something you create by achieving things, or impressing people, or collecting stuff. Meaning, he said, has to come from something eternal. something bigger than you, something that goes beyond just you. This is where Tolstoy's ideas really start flipping the script. He figured out that chasing after your own happiness, just focusing on what you want, actually makes you feel worse. It cuts you off, isolates you. But when you start focusing on other people, faith, on giving, being part of something greater, that's when meaning becomes real. Not because it fixes everything, but because it connects you to something that lasts longer than just your individual life. Tolstoy saw this in the lives of the Russian peasants. Despite their poverty, they lived with a quiet contentment, a sense of purpose that Tolstoy could not understand at first. They did not rely on wealth, status, or intellectual achievements to define their worth. Instead, their meaning came from their faith, their relationships, and their connection to something greater than themselves. Here lies the paradox. The more we focus on ourselves, the less fulfilled we become. And yet, when we surrender our ego and connect to something beyond the self, we discover a meaning that cannot be shaken. But what does this mean for us? In a world that celebrates individualism and self-promotion, how do we begin to shift our perspective? How do we break free from the illusion of meaning and uncover something deeper, something real? Tolstoy's answer was simple, yet profound. Meaning begins where the self ends. It begins with surrender, with the willingness to let go of our need for control and embrace the mystery of existence. But surrender is not easy. It requires us to confront the illusions we hold most dear, to question everything we think we know about life and purpose. It demands courage, humility, and a leap of faith into the unknown. Tolstoy's revelation didn't come in a flash of divine light or a sudden epiphany. It came through struggle, despair, and the slow unraveling of everything he thought he understood. His search for meaning led him to confront a truth many of us spend our lives avoiding. Life's ultimate purpose cannot be fully grasped by the mind. It must be lived, felt, and surrendered to. In Tolstoy's eyes, the root of human suffering lies in our insistence on control. We cling to the illusion that we can define our own purpose, that we can mold life into something predictable and secure. But this control is fleeting at best, an illusion at worst. What happens when the things you've built your life around begin to crumble? Tolstoy realized that meaning does not come from certainty. It comes from connection to others, to the infinite, to the raw experience of existence itself. This is why he found wisdom in the lives of Russian peasants. Their faith was not intellectual. It wasn't a set of rules or dogmas. It was a lived connection, a way of being that embraced both the joy and the suffering of life as part of something greater. But what does this connection look like? It begins with surrender. Not surrender in the sense of defeat, but letting go of the need to have all the answers. Tolstoy described this as a return to simplicity, a willingness to trust in the mystery of existence rather than trying to solve it. Imagine standing there, at the edge of a vast ocean. You can't see its depths. You can't really predict its currents, and yet you feel it. Its presence is undeniable. You just know it's there. It's powerful, infinite, even if you can't fully grasp it. That's the kind of surrender Tolstoy was talking about. A trust in something beyond yourself, a sense that maybe life's meaning isn't found in answers, but in living. But Tolstoy's ideas go deeper, or maybe just sideways. He pushes us to look at the hardest questions. What if life's meaning can't really be explained? What if the answer isn't words, but actions? For him, it was the act of living with purpose that became his solution. Purpose wasn't a destination. It was a path, something to just keep walking toward. One of the more powerful parts of Tolstoy's thoughts is his take on selflessness. He believed meaning wasn't found in lifting yourself up. It's when you help others. That's where it is. Later in life, he gave up his wealth, his status. He chose simplicity, service. He came to realize that connection. It's not about what you take. It's about what you give. And in giving, you kind of step outside yourself. But then there's the hard part. Letting go of control doesn't mean giving up completely. It's about a new kind of freedom. Freedom to really be in the moment, to do things with intention, to accept life as it comes at you. Tolstoy thought this freedom was the only way to escape that existential weight we all feel. Even still, surrender is terrifying. It means letting go of the stories you tell yourself, the identities you think define you, the illusions you've been holding on to forever. Facing the void, it's not easy. You can't do it with fear. It takes courage. And you know what? The void, it's not actually empty. When you stop trying to fill it up with nonsense, you find out it's full of life, connection, meaning. That act of letting go, of giving up trying to control everything, opens the door. A door to a deeper way of living. Tolstoy's journey shows us that finding meaning in a world that feels meaningless isn't about finding a single, clear answer. It's about being okay with the questions, connecting to something bigger than yourself, and living with purpose, even when things feel messy and unsure. But how do we even start? How do we take what Tolstoy figured out and make it into something real for ourselves? Tolstoy's insights are not just ideas to ponder, they are principles to live by. His philosophy demands action, not merely reflection. If meaning cannot be fully explained, but must instead be lived, how do you begin to incorporate this understanding into your own life? How do you transform abstract ideas into tangible change? The first step is one of radical honesty. Confront the illusions you cling to. Ask yourself, what have I built my life around? What do I tell myself gives me meaning? It might be your career, relationships, achievements, or possessions. These things are not inherently wrong, but Tolstoy reminds us that they are fragile. They are impermanent. If your sense of purpose depends entirely on these external factors, what happens when they inevitably fade? Begin by questioning your attachments. Why does your success matter to you? Is it because it aligns with your values, or because it validates your existence? Why do you seek recognition? Is it for connection or for control? The answers may be uncomfortable, but they are necessary to break free from the illusions that bind you. Next, practice letting go of control. This does not mean abandoning your responsibilities or living passively. It means accepting that life's uncertainties are not obstacles to overcome. They are part of the journey. Tolstoy's revelation was that surrender is not a weakness. It is a strength. It allows you to move through life with openness and resilience, embracing both the joys and the sorrows without clinging to either. One way to cultivate this surrender is through mindfulness. Spend a few moments each day simply observing the present moment. Notice the sensations in your body, the sounds around you, the rhythm of your breath. When your mind drifts to worries about the future or regrets about the past, gently bring it back to the present. This practice reminds you that life is not something to be controlled. It is something to be experienced. Another key principle of Tolstoy's philosophy is connection. Meaning is not found in isolation. It arises when we step outside ourselves and engage with the world around us. This might mean deepening your relationships, contributing to your community, or simply showing kindness to a stranger. Tolstoy believed that selflessness is not a sacrifice. It is the path to true fulfillment. Try this. The next time you feel consumed by your own struggles, shift your focus outward. Ask yourself, how can I help someone else today? How can I be of service, even in a small way? You'll find that the act of giving, of connecting, has a way of filling the void that no achievement or possession ever could. Finally, embrace the mystery. Tolstoy's greatest revelation was that meaning does not come from answers. It comes from living the questions. Instead of asking, what is the purpose of my life? Try asking, how can I live purposefully today? Instead of seeking certainty, learn to find beauty in the unknown. Here's an exercise to start this process. 1. Write down 3 things you believe give your life meaning. Be honest, even if the answers feel shallow or superficial. 2. For each one, ask yourself, what happens if I lose this? What remains? 3. Shift your focus to something greater. What can you connect to that transcends your individual self? It could be your relationships, your faith, or even the simple act of appreciating life as it is. Tolstoy's wisdom is a challenge to live differently. It's an invitation to step out of the endless pursuit of external validation and into a life of depth, connection, and presence. But this path, it's not easy. It forces you to face some really uncomfortable truths. Makes you let go of what feels safe and familiar, even when it's the last thing you want. And it pushes you to live in a way that, let's be honest, most people don't understand. The reward, though, it's huge. A kind of meaning that stays with you, even when life feels like it's crumbling apart. As you take these steps, remember that meaning is not a destination. It is a journey. It is not something you find. It is something you create. Moment by moment, through the way you live, the connections you build, and the truths you embrace. Tolstoy's journey reveals a truth that is both unsettling and liberating. Meaning is not something you discover. It is something you choose. It is not a puzzle to solve, nor a treasure to unearth. It is a way of living, a practice of surrender, connection, and presence that transforms the ordinary into the profound. You now understand why the things we often rely on for meaning, success, wealth, recognition, can never truly satisfy us. These external markers are fleeting, fragile, and incapable of withstanding the weight of life's uncertainties. They distract us from the deeper currents of existence, the ones Tolstoy uncovered in his darkest moments. Still, it's not really something to feel hopeless about. It's more like an invitation, one to stop running away from the emptiness and just face it. To let life be less about finding answers and more about building something that actually feels like your own. Meaning starts to grow when you stop trying to control everything all the time. When you connect to something bigger than yourself. And when you just accept the strange mystery of existing at all. Tolstoy's words, they're a reminder. It's not the big, shiny stuff that gives life its meaning. It's the tiny, almost invisible things you do every day that really shape it. A small act of kindness towards someone else, sitting alone with your thoughts in the quiet, or just showing up, even when everything feels pointless or too much to handle. It's about choosing to live with purpose, even when chaos is everywhere around you. So, this is where things get real. The choice is yours. Are you going to keep chasing things that don't last, building your life on stuff that's gone the second you blink? Or will you try the harder path, the one that makes you face yourself, makes you vulnerable, and forces you to let go of what you think you need? That path, it's tough sometimes, maybe even awful, but it's also where the real, unshakable kind of meaning actually starts to show up. And honestly, it's not like you choose it once and you're good. You've got to make that decision again and again, every single day. In every choice, every interaction, every single second you've got. It's about living like all of it matters, like the mystery, even though it doesn't make sense, is still worth leaning into, even if you'll never really figure it all out. So, I leave you with one final question. If meaning is not something you find, but something you create, what will you create today?